My name is Flo Fu. I'm a musician, director. I love aviation so much. People started to call me AirFlo.
Hi, this is AirFlo at Oshkosh 2024. Where I'm at is Forum 7. It's amazing. Burt Rutan is here on the stage, and the room is all packed. Behind me is a film crew to make Burt Rutan's documentary. Okay, we're looking forward to see Burt Rutan.
You hear me in the back? Okay, good. I'm going to introduce my wife, Tanya, who came up here to say that there's a chair for you. Why would I show airplanes that had not been flight tested? Well, at 81 years old, I have gas. You know what? That's not a fart. I give a shit. So I'm in the hopes that somebody out there will build these, because I'm too frail to build them myself. If somebody wants to fund or build one of these 4 projects, I would love to see that happen. And before I die, I'd love to see those new designs show up here at Oshkosh and do the cool things that they do. So anyway, we're going to have some fun here looking at new designs. Lower left here shows Grant Goldsworthy. Anybody know who Grant Goldsworthy was? He's the inventor of the pultrusion process. And for years, Grant's passed away some time ago, but for years we used to go off-site and sit on a beach somewhere, and we're using just colored pencils and empty sketch pads, and we did concept design together. Also shown on here is not one of the new designs that I was talking about, but it shows my concept for a deep submersible that's low cost. You know, something that you could take a small boat, not a big $1 million a month ship, and go and look around the Titanic yourself. Also, that's a turboprop version of Aries. You know, you got a gas engine blowing on the tail so you can fly long range if you want to. And you have a lot of power on the electric motors on the wings, so you could jump out of the water, and it would have worked, unlike Skigel. And instead of that, actually, my wife, who's a seaplane pilot, she has a Super Patrol. You know what that is? A Brazilian-built little amphibian. In the middle of the bottom is a special airplane. It's called a skirt wing S2L airplane. That area, see this square right here and here? There's normally nothing there when you're cruising, but for takeoff and landing, you roll this out from a groove in the fuselage, and now you have a lot of wing area. Not only that, but see this wing doesn't have elevators, and this one doesn't have ailerons. There's 2 pivots here, and what you control is to move one of these up and down. So if you look at the front view, if you move it down, you have the whole wing negative lift. If you move the other one up, Now you have, what you have here is full of ailerons, even though you don't have ailerons. And of course, you do pitch the same way. If you look here, you can see this is a stadium. It's a stadium across the street from where our prisoners were held in Iran. That was a long time ago, probably before a lot of you were born. But anyway, this is a tail sitter, and this thing's slide down. You can take 19 guys in here to rescue. You'd have about 8 or 9 shooters that would come out and kill anybody while you're crossing the street, and you'd get rid of them, and you could take off straight up and get our hostages back. Okay, this is the first one of the 4 I'm going to show you. This is an oops. Come on, bird. First of all, this is a urban transport. I'm sure you know if you pay attention that there's probably about 250 corporations or people trying to develop something that hovers so it could be in V2L, vertical takeoff and landing, urban transport. Okay. Those have some real awful flaws. There's one of those that has spent $1,000 million, and they still are not flying in here at Oshkosh. You would think they would get the message by now that there's something wrong here, right? Well, what I'm going to show you is an airplane that has a gas engine, a proper gas engine driving a propeller on the front, and it hovers with just 4 electric motors. And now you're going to say, well, wait a minute, you can't do that, because if one of those fails, you turn upside down and kill everybody. Well, this one doesn't. I'll show you why. Here's the plane behind the 4 electric motors, and they're blowing directly on, each of them is blowing directly on an oversized tail with an oversized flight control system on it. So if you're not blowing on that, the other 3, in fact just 2 of those motors give you control power so you don't turn her upside down and kill everybody. Got that message? It's kind of cool. Another thing that's cool about something that has a vertical takeoff and landing, if you look at all of these out there, almost all of them are electric with various numbers of electric lifters. When I say various numbers, usually it's at least 6 and some of them are 15. You could lose all of those with this airplane and do a belly landing where you're going to wreck part of the airplane, but you're going to walk away, nobody gets injured. Now, if you lose all of your motors on these hovering things, what happens? If you just happen to be above about 30 feet, everybody dies. Well, I spent a lot of time working on identifying airplanes that kill people, you know, like the Baron. You're going to hear a lot more about that because I have a talk tomorrow about the Starship. And you're going to find out the inside story of why it didn't replace the King Airs. Okay, how does it hover? Let's go to what happens with a pilot. His chair is on a pivot right here at his hips. And now he's looking at the like you look at a helicopter. you're looking at the ground right here. Because it's not shown, but there's windows that should be here. The window in the middle, right? Now, you probably, 10% of you figured out a problem already. And that is, if you move the stick left to right, that's normally rolling it, right? But if you're in this hovering mode here, moving left to right, you yaw the airplane, don't you? Not rolling. If you kick your rudder pedals, your airplane yaws left to right, right? But this awful thing. If the seat is turned there to keep you always upright, which is what you generally do, you don't have to. When you kick a rudder pedal, you're actually rolling the airplane. And there, if you roll the airplane, what do you see in front of you? You see yaw. Got it? Now you might ask, well, how do you do that? Well, 25 years ago, I was out selling a concept that had this kind of flight controls, and it was based on the Desert One rescue thing. And I went around trying to sell it with Vought, with one of the primes. And I worked out that, also I designed a 4-place airplane. You could keep at home in your backyard, take off and fly 300 knots and land on a roof in Chicago. Now, I don't know why anyone would want to go to Chicago, but you can do it. Okay? It's not difficult. Now, I'm going to tell you something else that's more difficult, but quite doable. It's doable with push rods and bell cranks. If you're hovering here, or if you're flying like an airplane level, if you pull the stick forward and back, see that X tail? The elevators go like this to pitch you up, and the elevators down here go like this to pitch you up. You're moving all 4 of these flight controls surfaces to do pitch, right? Okay, if you want to yaw, like kicking the rudder pedal in hover, kicking the rudder pedals in conventional flight, or kicking the rudder pedals in hovering mode, because remember that reverses. If you want to yaw, the elevators on the top do this, and on the bottom they do this, right? They yaw the airplane. If you want to roll the airplane, these same surfaces, they all do this, and you get a nice, powerful, reactive, nice roll rate, nice roll acceleration. So this airplane has better than airplane-like control response, okay? Whether it's flying as an airplane or whether it's taking off and landing as a vertical takeoff and landing. Now, something it's a huge advantage over something like you can name any of the 200 folk who are doing this. Huge advantage. They have an issue that they're running those they're in hover all the time. They take off and then they hover like this, right? They go somewhere. And then they do this and they land. For their whole flight, whether it's a mile or whether it's 50 miles, this is about as far as they can possibly go, they need reliable, high energy from a battery, right? And one of the reasons that one of these things takes thousands of millions of dollars to develop is you've got to cool the engines. If they get hot, you'll lose them one at a time and maybe only a minute apart. And you can tell the passengers that, I'm sorry we got a problem but the problem will go away in about a minute or two. The problem in your mind at least goes away. It still is a problem for your relatives and your kids. Okay? Well, let's say this thing is sitting on the ground. By the way, your feet are outside there. Have you ever put your feet outside on a helicopter while it's hovering? You can hardly feel the flow. Well, this one's even less because your feet are above. Your feet are above the hovering motors, right? The only issue is that if it's raining hard, you're going to get your feet wet. But that's part of the experience. Now, what I'm showing you here is a single-place airplane. Okay? But it's totally scalable. You can do a 4-place airplane, you can do a 14-place airplane. And use all of these concepts. And all of them will have just 4 hovering motors. Now the neat thing about it, when you take off here, in 5 seconds, you're flying this way, right? Like an airplane. And you turn off the hovering motors. Now you're flying a gas airplane with a large high aspect ratio wing. You can fly 400 miles at 150 knots. You know, these guys that say I've got real long range, ask them how fast you went during that. Or ask them if they carried anybody, you know, then they hang up on you. A conventional airplane that has really better performance than a Cherokee, okay? The whole nose motors, they're not required. You can just put a bullet from the tail and support it. I did this. There's work that needs to be done on this. This is CAD, but it's really mostly a sketch. Okay, so it's a concept, and I wouldn't build it exactly like this, but the reason it's so short is when you roll it into the hangar, you're gonna get a hangar door that's no higher than that, right? Or if you have one of these, you build a nice little vertical hangar yourself. You go down to Lowe's and you buy 2 of those little cheap storage units and you stack them on top of each other, and then you got your hangar. They're electric motors for 5 seconds. You don't even need to cool them. They're not going to get hot in 5 seconds, are they? For landing, you're going to run it more like 8 to 10 seconds. Okay? In other words, you're going to come in, you're going to do this, then you're going to find a place to land, and you're going to set it down. You don't need to run them any more than 10 seconds for landing. Instead of running them the whole 50 miles that you fly, right? For takeoff, you give it a gun. Remember, it can hover, I didn't tell you this, it can hover with just 2 of those motors. You can fail 2 of them, and it'll hover, and it's totally controllable because of the big moments you generate by blowing their air directly on those tail surfaces. Got it? Now, what does that mean? How big a battery do you need if you're going to run it for 20 seconds? Instead of the thing being horribly loaded with heavy batteries to get the range, and then you sell tickets and you put 4 heavy people in it, you've got a big problem. The batteries for this beast don't weigh hardly anything because they're only run for 5 seconds for takeoff and they're only run for about 10 seconds for landing. Now, when they're not running, this is not something that's done with an actuator, but if you pick a pivot on a blade, it will fold aft and have very little aerodynamic drag. So you're not going to be windmilling these things while you cruise to Milwaukee or whatever, okay? Or Chicago. They just fold out of the way, and when you give them power, they immediately unfold and run. This is something real similar. It's done a lot with model airplanes. These are a big cost thing too. Now people say that you should have an electric. You should have an electric urban transporter because it doesn't pollute, and therefore you are not putting carbon into the atmosphere. Right? Well, I have a Tesla Model Y, and I just love that car because it's so much fun to just sit in it and let it drive me somewhere. You know, it's called full self-driving. In fact, within a year, they'll probably get rid of the steering wheel. Maybe. But in general, I never put my foot on the brake or the gas, and I just wiggle the steering wheel once in a while to tell it that I'm not sleeping in the back, because I'm responsible for driving it, even though it's driving me. In fact, if you get pulled over by the police, which is not likely because the car won't break the speed limit. You go full self-drive, it knows what the speed limit is everywhere. It even reads a sign, and it drives that speed. Now you can say, well, I want to go 4% over that, which you'll go a little over, but you're not going to get a ticket there. But anyway, if you do get a ticket for some reason, you just tell the policeman, why do you want my driver's license? I wouldn't drive in this car today. And that's going to be a valid thing to say once they get rid of the steering wheel, isn't it? Energy that takes to make the battery for the typical hovering urban transport vehicle, that energy is made with fossil fuels. Not just making the battery, that's a small amount of energy, especially the way Elon Musk does it. But you still have to go out and mine the ore, mine the special stuff. You got to use chemistry, you got to heat things, you got to put them together. In other words, if you drive when I bought my Tesla Y, I heard the atmosphere for 100,000 miles of driving. I would break even only after driving 100,000 miles. And then after that, if I'm a greenie, I can smile and I say, I'm driving something that's good for the planet. After 100,000 miles. And the battery is warranted for 70,000 miles. Duh. Anyway, I don't need to talk about that. But I did. Okay, let's talk about the second design that I'm unveiling. Now, I don't have very good experience for success. The pond racer, the very first time that it flew with enough horsepower to win the unlimited race at Reno, the very first time it was on a practice lap to qualify, and it got a cockpit fire. It was alcohol fuel, and the pilot couldn't see that it was burning until it just down there roasted him. He went and he landed on a lake bed. He didn't want to do it in front of it's really not polite to kill yourself in front of 20,000 people in the stands. So he flew another 2 minutes, went down and landed in the lake bed, a very survivable landing, except that he was burned to death. The other race plane I did was for Dan Mortensen. Is Dan in the crowd? There's a biplane racer. That airplane is in the museum, but they displaying it was something missing. See these things here? The biplane rules say that you must have the K-main struts, and they must be 3/4 inch wide. Okay? And a biplane usually has to have them or the wings break, right? And you don't cross wires and so on. Well, why are they curved? They said, I didn't want them to be stiffed. I want them to be collapse because these are fully cantilevered wings on the canard in the wing. Well, anyway, what happened to it? The race pilot didn't have a lot of experience racing. They didn't have to qualify in those days like they do now for the Reno race. He was coming around the pylon real low, and he looked over here and there's an airplane. And he looked again to see if the airplane was moving towards him, right? In other words, if that guy is going to run into me, we're both dead. It won't be my fault because he ran into me from behind, but we're still both dead. And he concentrated them on that long enough to put a wingtip into the dirt at 250 miles an hour. All right? And one of the things I'm very proud of is that this uses a structure like a long easy. He walked away from that with only very minor injuries. So anyway, why would I do another race plane with that kind of success? Well, the number 2 design I'm going to show you is a race plane. Does that make me a racist? Why would you have a race plane that has 2 cockpits, 2 people to fly a race plane? This requires 2 instrument-rated pilots to do the race. You'll understand on the next slide. Actually, if you want, you can carry 4 people. You carry a guy behind or in front. By the way, the thing is tiny. You can see a guy standing here. Let's look at the race course. The race course is around the world, like Voyager did. If you have a round-the-world race like my brother wanted to do, he wanted to do the checkered flag. If you do that with a Voyager or a global flyer, it's extremely dangerous because to get around the world non-refueled, you have to build an airplane so frail. Voyager, if you went up to it and did that with your knuckles, you have damaged it needing repair. Skins on it where 2 plies are crossing 5,500 carbon tape. You're going to damage it. Well, this one can have a 6-7G wing. It can be stiff because on this race you're allowed to do a refueling stop once. You're going to go around the world. You have to take off and land at the same runway, right? You can pick where you refuel. And another requirement is the crew, which is the crew, which is the pilot. That's not a co-pilot. They're both pilots because sometimes a guy is sleeping, and for that few hours, this guy is the pilot during the race. Okay? And when this guy wants to sleep, this guy puts his seat up, and now he's the pilot. The cockpits are absolutely identical. Everything down to even nose gear steering. It's absolutely identical. You can't tell which cockpit you're in. Okay, what is a race team? Of course, you have to have 2 instrument-rated pilots because this thing can go to 50,000 feet. You have to. This team is the meteorologist. The meteorologist has a supercomputer, and he's on the ground. And he's going to tell the pilots when and where to go, what altitude to go to, and he knows by some extremely complex mathematics, he knows whether it's good to go 400 miles out of the way to get an extra hour of jet stream tailwind. Got it? So he's the most important part of your race team, is your meteorologist. Well, how do you communicate with these things? Well, first of all, if you had a recip engine, you could do what some of these long, easy racers do. You can turn the RPM higher. Or you can do funny things with the engine. This is an FJ33, which is the engine that's on that little single engine general aviation airplane. It's FADEC controlled. You can't abuse it. It won't let you do anything outside of its normal operating parameters. Okay? Now you can abuse the airplane by going too fast, flutter issue. You can abuse it by maneuvering too hard, even though this is a 6G airplane. The Voyager on takeoff was a 1.3G airplane. Really? Why is it a 6G airplane? Well, we want the spars to be real stiff. We don't want them dragging on the ground, right? Everybody know what Starlink is? Okay. Now, where are the grandstands for this race? They're not at Reno, where you have to fly there and stay in a hotel and drive there and buy yourself a expensive ticket and sit in the grandstand. No. You do it right at home on your computer or in your home theater. And if you want to follow one of these airplanes, you pay $2 a minute. And you can look at 8 cameras on that airplane. Some of them are inside, so you can tell whether or not this guy is going to the bathroom. And some of them look forward and down. There's even a camera on the wingtip, so the sponsor's logo shows up on the tail. Bottom line, there's 8 in front of it. Cameras are cheap. They make millions of Teslas, and they have wonderful 4K cameras. So they're off the shelf and they're real cheap. And if you have 1 million people paying $2 a minute, you've got a pretty big grandstands, and that's what they do to make it. Now, something I didn't tell you that's very important. You don't own one of these airplanes. There's a new company that certifies it. This will be a certified airplane because it's going to be used commercially, right? You're going to let somebody rent it for a week if they want to be in a big race. They can rent it for a week if they're not in a big race. If they just want to go out and break the world's speed record around the world, one refuel, they are then the king, the holder, the current holder of the trophy for the fastest Model 396, fastest one in the world, one refuel. Now, this company is going to cost a lot of money to certify. If you're built, you don't want to pay big certification costs and then only build 20 airplanes. So then if it's certified, they could sell you an airplane. Now, would you like to have a 4-place airplane that can operate out of an 1,800 feet runway on a small airport? Maybe you have one in your backyard. You can take off and without refueling, go and land at any other airport in the world. And when you do, the ground roll is only 800 feet. That is a special airplane. And a lot of rich guys will probably buy these airplanes. Now, we expect this program might be funded, though, by things that I can't talk about. Because just envision the situation for reconnaissance of military airplanes. The enemy, talking about Russia and China, they know where every Global Hawk is. They know the hangar that they're in. They know where they are when they fly. These airplanes are expected to be anywhere in the world with somebody doing racing or doing attempts for a new record. So it's not unusual that they are anywhere. And that in itself is a form of stealth. Got it? And you can hide out in a little, let's see it hiding out. No, it's not. Plane, the wings are removable outboard of the booms. Those wings are almost exactly the same size as an open class competition sailplane wing. Okay? And if you pull them off, two guys can take any competition glider apart with just two people. You lay them on the floor, and the floor space is only 26 by 30 feet. For most of that space, except for the tails, look down there. If you walk up to the airplane, put your hand on the top of the fuselage, it's that far above the ground. This is ground. 38 inches. It's round, so that it's optimum structure for pressurization. And it doesn't need clearance for a propeller. It doesn't have an issue about rocks kicking into the prop and whatever. Bottom line I'm trying to say is this is a very small airplane. The fact that it has an 85-foot wingspan, you might think it's a big airplane, but no, I'll build it in my hangar. Something that is focused on getting you to orbit, Earth orbit, at the lowest possible cost of doing so. How many people here would go to Earth orbit if they paid $30 to $90 million to do it? How many here would love to go to Earth orbit? You could even, okay, and you could even dock at any of the 4 space stations that are being built. And it costs you about $800,000 or $900,000. Come on. There's people here that would be a small percentage of their net worth. Don't you have a bucket list of going to Earth orbit? Okay, what I have here is a vehicle that can go to Earth orbit, and it doesn't have a second rocket stage. I don't know whether you're aware, but even Elon Musk doesn't recover the second stage of his booster. Okay, nobody's ever done that. Well, this thing that looks like a first stage is actually a second stage, because the first stage is a Gulfstream 4, and there's one of them on the ramp over here at Basler. Okay, what do you do with it? You push the button and try to make it advance. All I did was push the it just 10 years ago I patented this idea, and it would give 50% more payload to orbit on an off-the-shelf Minotaur rocket, which is ground launched, But by doing dynamic launch, it increases a payload orbit by 50%, and rocket guys will kill grandma to get 5%, right? The green thing is your second stage rocket. It looks like a first stage. The first stage is a Gulfstream. If you look in the center here, this is a towed glider. Got it? And if you look in the center, it's being towed by the nose because there's a hoop and a pin that you can pull. If you pull that pin, now, if you pull this pin, now it's pulling it from here. And that's going to pitch it up without you having to control it. What the glider guy tries to do, he tries to do a loop. Can you do a loop on tow? If you do, you're going to break your wing or the tow rope. And of course, the first thing you break is the tow rope. Otherwise, there'd be a bunch of dead winch launch pilots, right? Well, this is a very strong wing. And the tow rope, instead of being as big around as your finger, is almost an inch in diameter of Nextel, because we're going to put 300,000 pounds on it. Now, why do you want to put that much load on it? Well, look here. Notice when it's at 300 pounds, it's towing forward a vertical. So it's accelerating the rocket and the glider. And it's accelerating like crazy because it's a ferocious load. And also because of this is where it's pulling, right here. And here's the CG of the glider. And if you take the glider when you got this huge load on it, if you go full off stick, full forward, it doesn't do hardly anything because it's driven by the fact that is towing the load of the CG with a ferocious load. Now, where do you get the ferocious load from? You've got to get a lot of energy. You know what energy is? That's amount of total energy. It isn't just energy that you need power. It gets enough energy to launch this thing right up to the Mach limit of its straight wing, and it gets that in 8 seconds. Now, how the hell do you get a huge amount of energy in only 8 seconds? This ferocious load decelerates the Gulfstream. It takes it from a nice speed to below the stall speed in 8 seconds. If you're in the Gulfstream, you're gonna, the glider's, he's low, he's down there, he tries to loop, and you're gonna, hey, tighten your shoulder harness, right? Because you're gonna slow down. Is that right? Shoulder harness or seat, I forgot which. But at any rate, bottom line, there's a ferocious amount of energy available at 40,000 feet because it's the kinetic energy of the Gulfstream. And because of that, the Gulfstream needs to be heavy. The Gulfstream's weight, along with the rocket, the glider's weight, along with the rocket, has to be less than half of the weight of the Gulfstream. So the Gulfstream, hell, loaded up with passengers plus a bunch of fuel because they want it heavy. You want the Gulfstream to be heavy because then you get more energy for dynamic launch. Got it? Dano's friend made some 3D printed models for me to kind of show it. And see the different views of the rope onto the glider. Probably the best one to look at is this one here. That's pulling forward a vertical, and that's at the point at which you release the rope. Now, releasing a rope, you can make it automatically release when it's 20 degrees forward, but a better way is to do what they do in aircraft carriers, is you break a little piece of metal when you get to a certain load, and you want to break that piece of metal before you break your wing, if you want to get home. Okay? And it was loaded down to be heavier than the glider, a lot heavier than the glider. And see this guy holding a rocket? There it is, a rocket on top. Okay? And they did a real dynamic launch demonstration at radio control scale. But Dano, do you want to introduce your guys? Tell us a little bit about how you did that. You don't, huh? You're really shy. You had folk from NASA, or NASA. You had folk from the model rocket field. Right? Now take a look at it. This is an actual camera that was mounted on the wingtip of this glider. And look at it. There's a rocket with a rocket plume. Isn't that cool? And here, taken a couple seconds later, is a rocket on its way to space. This is what it's going to look like when you go to orbit with a system where every element of it is reusable and the cost is very low. Now, is it scalable? Yes, it is. Doesn't have to be single plays. But I would build the prototype single plays. You'll need something a little heavier than a Gulfstream if you're going to put 3 people in orbit. But, you know, I thought it'd be really cool to do a manned orbital space launch as one of the acts in the evening air show at Oshkosh.
It was an effort on a hobby level, not there's no company. We're just having fun. You know, it's a different mindset when you're doing it for fun and not for getting paid.
Well, keep in mind, maybe this audience doesn't know, but I founded Scale Composites in 1982, and a lot of people thought it needed me. Well, I retired because of my health in 2011, which is 13 years ago, and Scaled Composites is still there, so it proved that they didn't make me after all.
No, we're still having fun.
I need to keep moving on, or we're going to run out of time. Let's look at what actually ends up in orbit. It's a small, very light. Oh, by the way, you don't get dynamic loads and heating on the way up like you do on every other orbital launch rocket. Why is that? Because you light this rocket only when you're above 95% of the atmosphere. Got it? That's kind of cool. I don't know why people don't do air launch and everything. Right here you see 6 little rocket engines. I think it's 6. These will be developed by the same guy that designed and built Elon Musk's rocket engines when he started SpaceX. You ever heard of SpaceX? Okay. These motors are used to fine-tune the orbit, because if you're going to dock at a space station, you want to go exactly to orbit, which lets you get there. They're also used for attitude control, and they're also used for retro burn so that you can come home, you get out of orbit. And the reason for having 6 small ones is redundancy. You can fail 3 of those and still get home. The reason that this thing is here is to give you redundancy of not killing yourself if your parachute fails. You're going to leave a parachute, a small parachute goes through, just a single parachute. All these guys that have people in them to come back from orbit, Apollo or Musk with Dragon, or everybody uses multiple parachutes because they fail. And a skydiver, well, a golfer goes whack. Oh shit. You get a 25G stroking seat. You get a foot here, and you get 4 foot here. And this vehicle is so light with these feathers that it can go down without a parachute on concrete or water, and you can walk away from it. Instead of having 3 parachutes, you really don't need any. Well, you got to re-kit the spaceship, but it'll cost you more for the flight. But in general, there's a backup for injuring the crew by just having crush and having a low ballistic coefficient. Now, I don't have time to explain all the reasons why, but this takes the same kind of advantage in an orbital environment as I did with Spaceship One by feathering it. That's why it's called feather. Spaceship One looked like this at one time. Okay. Because this one, I don't have pictures of it. You don't need them. But this was something I thought of, I think Tuesday. And I added it to the PowerPoint. What it is, it's a 4-place home-built, cozy-sized airplane that it looks exactly like a Starship. Because when I got here in the Starship on Monday, I looked around the field and I said, "Where's all the Starship? We're the only Starship here. The hell is this? This is a big show with many thousands of airplanes. It has only one Starship." And I promised Robert Sher, where are you, Robert? Who flew us here? I promised him that within my lifetime there will be 60 Starships on the flight at Oshkosh. And most of them will be homebuilt. Starships, that's tomorrow's talk. We can do it ourselves, though. I'm talking about a real small airplane, no bigger than a Cozy Mark IV, 4-place, and it is pressurized though, because it wants to operate up to at least 25 to 30,000 feet, and I think it needs to go at least 300 knots. In other words, it's somewhat comparable to a business jet in terms of its performance. But it's built in your garage and it looks exactly like a Starship. When it flies over town and you see it, because it's small, but it is absolutely the same loft, you can't tell it's not a full-scale Starship. And you'll think, well, Beach is back in production. Anyway, I think that'd be a cool thing. And somebody here ought to do it. Is who are my heroes? Who are the people that I look up to as the biggest heroes? Now, it isn't sports heroes or military heroes. These are heroes among the group of people that are airplane or spaceship designers. Right? So I went through everybody that I could think of who might be the best hero, and I made a list. And the list includes, oh, by the way, this is alphabetical. It includes all of these people. And when I got past 14, I said, All of these would qualify maybe as being one of my top 5 heroes, right? But I'm not going to go through it in details. You can see them, but I'm going to go through it now differently. Okay, who is Alexei Rostovich? When I did the wingship trip in Russia, he is the god of wingships for Russia. He not only designed the Caspian Sea Monster, which flew in the 60s, and it is a 500,000 pound ring ship, but very unusual for Russia. He was co-pilot on the first flight of the Caspian Sea Monster. Now in Russia, designers don't do flight tests, and they certainly don't be in the airplane for first flight. Like me, that was stupid. You know. But anyway, just some of his stuff. The Loon wingship is developed by the Russians in order to take out our Navy fleet. And yeah, those are ship-to-ship rockets. The one that they flew for us is in Chronic, and I did this yesterday, I think, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, so I need to move through quickly here. Von Braun, certainly. You know that Von Braun did this thing in the upper left when he was a teenager? The gyroscope on that is as big as the astronaut. Really. Glenn Curtis. First of all, I didn't include the Wright brothers because what the Wright brothers did, they were designers, certainly, and you can see a replica of their airplane right here in the museum. Look at it close. It's very clever. But those damn guys would sue anybody else who made an airplane that could turn. And I'm not a fan of them, but I'll tell you, their accomplishments were absolutely tiny compared to Glenn Curtis. Max Faget, according to Christopher Kraft, director of Project Mercury, is a true icon of the space program. There is no one in spaceflight history in this or any other country who's had a larger impact on man's quest for space exploration. I invited Max Faget to our rollout of Spaceship One when we came out of the covert 2 years, and there he is with Buzz Aldrin, and we're showing the world that we're doing a space program, and we're showing the spaceship and the White Knight and so on. And Faget was one of the key guys that put together the data for President Kennedy to say that it is possible for us to put a man on the moon. And Kennedy turned right around and made a talk that says that's our goal for America. Before 1970, we'll have a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth. Max Faget was key on that. Navy attack airplanes for Douglas. This picture on the bottom here of an aircraft carrier with everything on the deck. Every one of those airplanes was designed by Ed Hyman. Of course, Kelly Johnson. Do I need to say anything about Kelly Johnson? Well, he helped America win the Cold War, and he helped America survive, really. That's enough said. I'll talk more about him later. The guy that designed all the MiGs is certainly on the list. Okay? Recorded. Elon Musk. He's the ultimate multitask hero. The ultimate multitask human. And when I first met him, he was talking about the problem that he had for this week, and it was cavitation inside the turbopump development. He was I was convinced this guy must have an advanced degree in engineering to be talking like that, yet he doesn't have a formal education from a college. of engineering. He's a good listener, and he's smart as hell. By the way, the picture in the lower right here is when we had rolled out Spaceship One, but hadn't yet flown the rocket flights. And there's Elon Musk. And several of these people worked for him. I didn't know who that, I wasn't introduced to them. Peter Diamandis, the X-Prize guy, was there too. And I think it was Peter Diamandis that said, hey, I can get you into Rutan's shop and you can look at Spaceship One. So he came along. And it's really cool that this guy here is the undisputed richest man in the world, right? At this time, I had more employees than he did, which makes me a real shitty manager. He was a lot more successful than me. I did have lunch with Jack Northrop 5 years before he died, and enough said about Jack Northrop. A lot of people don't know it, but he didn't do just the flying wings. He did the Vega and the Alpha and the Black Bullet also, as well as the P-51 Black Widow. Okay, the next one, does everybody recognize the name Ed Schmuden? Warburg guys certainly do. He designed the P-51. He designed the F-86. He designed the airplane that my brother got shot down over North Vietnam, F-100. And he was on the design team later of the T-38 supersonic trainer. So he's got to be on the list. Sukhoi. Everybody is familiar with this guy here. You know, essentially the big competitor to our F-15 at the time. A few people know that he did an S-2 short landing commuter, and he also did an airliner. John Thorpe. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, have met John Thorpe. He died in 1992, but I got to meet him many times at Oshkosh. And of course, he's mostly known for the Cherokee. And he also did the T-18, which was the metal home built when I started doing the Very Big. A lot of people, the Very Big was made out of wood. And since I was a model airplane guy, I thought I could work with gluing wood together, but metal was too strange for me. A lot of people don't know that he also designed the Neptune, which for 10 years held the distance record. And it was taken away by the B-52 and later taken away by my brother. And of course the Winged Derringer, which is a cool airplane. Tupolev. The Russians tend to copy everything that we did. And here, the Tu-124, for a number of years, was the world's only operating jet airliner. Well, why was that? Because the British comets were grounded with their structural failures, pressurization windows, and so on. So Russia had the only jet airliner in the world for a while. Dick Van Dusen, on its list of 51 heroes of aviation, he is the undisputed leader in kit aircraft manufacturing. Are you in the audience? Okay, how many in here have an RV? Wow, that's impressive. That's probably more than the very easy than anything else I've designed. He cheats nowadays, though. He sells you ribs with holes drilled in them, and skins with holes drilled in them, and you can jig the airplane by using a stack of Clecos. And that's cheating. Okay, here's my list in order of top, and you'll see at the top is Kelly Johnson. Okay. Second is Ben Curtis. Third is Ed Heinemann. Fourth is Elon. And number 5 is Warner von Braun. Now people wonder, wait a minute, how could Warner von Braun be why isn't he number 1? 1,000 years from now, the books will only remember the moon landing. They're not going to remember Kelly Johnson. Right. How much time do I have now? What time is it? This is 12:05 now. I'm sorry, 12:25. Okay, the reason I'm saying there is a talk right after mine, so we can't bust that. Yeah. Okay, 10 minutes, so I'm going to move right along. Kelly really helped America win the Cold War. And he ran the Skunk Works by knowing that he was right, even though the boss was government people who contracted for his airplane. When I say government people, the best ones that he did were contracted by the CIA, not the Air Force or NASA. His replacement, Ben Rich, was a good friend of mine. Oh, by the way, I met Kelly just one time, so I'm proud to say that I did actually meet him. And it was when I'd only done a couple of home builds, so he didn't know who I was, but it was cool to actually meet him. To tell the government no, even though the government's the boss. And a manager or two after him was actually a previous president of Lockheed's competitor. Are you going to have somebody who's your competitor later come back and run your company? His 40 research aircrafts were all done below or on cost. Can anyone else complain that they do a government research program without a cost overrun? And also their unbelievable small schedules. Glenn Curtis, say a little bit about him and the rationale on why he's number 2. First of all, Glenn Curtis has 2 Collier trophies for individual achievement. So does Kelly Johnson, and so does a guy from Mojave. I'm the only alive one that has two Colliers. Glenn first amphibious airplane. He trained the Navy's first pilots and built the Navy's first airplane. He is considered in the U.S. to be the father of naval aviation. And that's quite a title. And the thing is, when he stopped doing airplanes, he's an old guy now, he didn't just put his feet up. He went to Florida and he founded 18 different corporations. He also was an extensive land developer. Oh, he developed the cities of Hialeah, Opa-locka, and Miami Springs. Anybody here from those 3 cities? Oh no. Florida people don't go to Wisconsin. Well, I thought that was kind of cool that he stayed active and did cool things. Okay, number 3 is Heinemann. I got to tell a little story about Heinemann. He came into my office because he had heard that something we didn't announce, but I don't know how he found out that we were developing an attack airplane. Now, he is the world's most famous attack airplane designer, right? So he comes in, and I'm thinking, cool, I gotta show him the Aries drawings. I hadn't built it yet, right? Now, in those days, you roll out big vellum pieces of paper, and you roll it and scroll. You know, we didn't have computers long before the internet, right? So I've got Ed Heinemann now. I think he was in his 90s. And I explained that, gee, with the gun on this side, the gun gases don't go in the inlet. So unlike the 810, you can maneuver all you want, and you don't put gun gases to flame out the engines. Wow, cool idea, right? And also, unlike a normal airplane of the day that doesn't have fly-by-wire, you can yank full F-stick on Aries, and it'll just make a real tight turn, and it won't depart from controlled flight. That was a big deal before we had computers replacing pilots. Ed Heinemann studied my drawing, and I thought he was looking at those sort of things. But he kind of looked at it and says, he pounded his fist on my drawing board and says, damn, I tried to get the Douglas to do that for years, and they wouldn't do it. Now, Burt Rutan is beaming. Ed Heinemann, the world's most famous attack aircraft designer, has given me a compliment for my design of an attack airplane that I hadn't built yet. And I says, well, what do you mean? He says, you use that watermark 10th-inch vellum paper. Well, I'm going to read Lisa Boldface. Elon Musk invited me to his shop just after he was up at Mojave to look at mine. What I was impressed by, he was doing in this little shop, not the one he's on now. It looked like just a commercial warehouse or something. And he was doing all the aspects of a rocket's development in-house himself. He was designing and building the engine, the avionics, the navigation, the communications, the structure, I mean everything. And even the primes don't do that. I thought that's kind of cool. But he was focused even then on solving the biggest problems of orbital rocket systems, and that is they cost a huge amount of money. Not to mention that they throw them away. Another thing that's really impressive about Elon, do you know anybody who has a goal of having a backup to human survival on Earth? You know anybody else that would even say something so bizarre? And what is really strange is he works relentlessly every day to do that. Instead of, that tinfoil hat weirdo, we don't listen to him because he wants to put humans on Mars. You know what I mean? He's just in a different world. And I think he really is an alien. Was definitely a designer, but his real value and goal during Apollo was his management skills and communication skills and managing such a horrendously complicated program. He was not somebody that sat at a drawing board and designed. So I couldn't put him at the top of the list even though a lot of people say Burt, the moon landings should be the top of any list. But that's why he was not. That's why he is not there. Questions until they kick us out. Sir, yell it out real loud.
Sir, your first design for the VTOL commuter, how does the pilot get into that thing? Because it's vertical.
You know, it was enabled because of an invention that was invented many years ago. It's called a ladder. One of the things that I mentioned, you have two ways to take off in that. You can get it up and sit it like you're looking at a helicopter and fly it, right? Another way, which I think people would like better, is you would motor the seat back so that you're sitting like a space shuttle on your back. And when you've got it, you have a 2G departure. And during that 2G departure, which is only a few seconds until you can be a real airplane, you are a real airplane at that point, when you get some dynamic pressure, right? I would turn the stick and roll it because it would give you a total 360 view of where everything is without doing this or that with your head. You're seeing 360 that first 2 seconds after liftoff. And I thought that's kind of cool.
Sign up to build one of those 4-seat starships.
Well, this thing was just, it was an idea a couple of days ago. You know what, I'd like to, first of all, you can't sign up with me. I'm 81, I can hardly walk nowadays. So, somebody in this audience who wants to start a home-built program of something that would be really cool, I'll help you on design and on concept, but I'm going to insist that it be high performance, and I'm going to insist that its shape is exactly like a starship. And yes, we're going to fold the canard back and put the flaps up. And when the canard is forward and the flaps are down, and because the trim tabs are where they belong back on the elbows, it's going to be real short takeoff and landing. Now, you're used to seeing a full-scale starship roll like a business jet. It goes way, it keeps going and finally lifts off, and it does this. You've never seen a starship, get off real quick, right? It can do that. And you're going to find out tomorrow at 11:30 why it doesn't do that.
Where do you think we're going with power plants in the future?
Tell you what, let me talk to you about power plants outside, because most of the people here are not impressed by and likely right, they're not impressed by my skills as a power plant designer. Except for Spaceship One, I always bought power plants from somebody else and I installed them. We really only developed one power plant, and it was the Spaceship One rocket. Okay, next question.
You're extremely creative. Where would you say American creativity and industry is today if you lost items other than Elon?
Not sure I understand the question, but let me make a statement about that. And that is success can be assured by just doing two things. One is have the freedom to do what you want to do. In other words, an unregulated society. And two, to have, thank you. And just as important, but they're both critical, is to have access to low-cost energy. If that two things happen, anything, you can do anything. And you can make any country the most successful one in the world if you just do those two things. And someday, hopefully, we'll have a leadership that's smart enough to provide those two things. Let me ask a question. Is the people who come here and give the next talk, are you here waiting? Who is next? You are? Okay, we'll get out of here. Thank you.